Welcome to episode 4 of Julie's Creative Life. I'm Julie, and I live in the northeastern part of the United States. And this is my little corner of the internet where I share my knitting, gardening, sewing, baking, anything else that kind of tickles that creative itch. In today's episode, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about one particular sweater pattern that I think probably every knitter has ever made. And I keep going back to it just because it's so much fun to knit and it's so versatile because you can use so many different weights of yarn. So you might have guessed I'm going to be talking about the Ranunculus. I am currently wearing a Ranunculus that has been knit with Nutiden unspun held double, and it worked beautifully in that yarn. It was a bit of a pain to knit just because unspun is so fragile and does tend to want to pull apart, but once it's knit up, it's incredibly strong. The one thing I will say about using unspun is that it does have a tendency to pill quite a lot. So right before I filmed this, I did glean this sweater, and I probably do that maybe every 8 weeks or so during the winter time when I'm wearing it, and it doesn't hurt it at all. But I'll show you, this is the fluff that I got from gleaning this time around. And the gleaner that I use just comes in this little travel bag. It has a blade here and then a smoothing section on it. It does open up. It has some different blades, but I typically just use one. But it works great. So all of my wool sweaters do get gleaned occasionally because there's always wear under the armpits and anywhere that you brush up against things. So, you know, doing dishes, I usually get some wear in the front a little bit. But this one was knit. I turn my camera around. This one was knit just at my natural hip. And it's, you know, it's quite a boxy shape. And some of the ranunculi that you've seen, I don't know if that's the plural for ranunculus sweaters, ranunculi, but some of them are very oversized. And I typically don't like to wear mine that way. So anyway, here's Ranunculus number 1, unspun Nutiden, 100% wool. The other Ranunculus that I knit was a gift for my sister, and I knit that using Ulcentrum. And I'll pop a photo of that here or here somewhere so you can see what that one looks like. And then I also made a summer version using Knit Picks Kotlin, so cotton linen blend. I just kind of wear this one over a vest, and I just left the sleeves capped, nothing crazy, just cast them off. And this one's kind of fun to throw over the top of, you know, a cotton t-shirt or a summer dress. The only thing I am going to do is, I think I'm going to, I still have some yarn left. I think I'm going to rework the hem because I did do a loose bind off. I think it was Jenny's stretchy bind off, but it's too flary. It flares out too much. So I think I want to unravel that and just do a regular loose bind off so that it doesn't flare so much. And I may even go back and add a little ribbing to the sleeve just because, you know, it's okay, but I think it might look better with a little bit of length and some ribbing. That's the beauty of knitting. You can always go back, pull things out, redo it, you know, reclaim yarn if you want to completely unravel a project, which is always good. So that's my Kotlin version. And then I have, in the spirit of trying to use what I already have, I've cast on another summer one. So I'm going to be using cotton yarn, and this is going to be pretty much lace weight, so it's meant to be worn completely over the top of a t-shirt. I haven't got very far other than beginning the yoke pattern, and I cannot remember the name of this yarn, but I'll put it on the screen below. The only thing I will say, I'm ready for the cable to get a bit bigger so I can switch these Chalgoon needle tips to wood. I don't like to knit cotton yarn with metal tips. I find it too slippery, so the sooner I can get these needles switched out, the better. I'll be happy about that. So this is my little ranunculus for the summer. Hopefully the next time I'll have some good progress on that. My other whip is the second sock from the Impossible Girl socks, and I haven't finished it, but I'm close. You know, life takes a hold and there are other things that need to be done, but I'm almost there. I have about an inch to go in the foot, and then I can start the toe decreases. So I will definitely have a pair of Impossible Girl socks next time you see me. I'm throwing yarn on the floor. I think that's it for the knitting. I have been doing a little bit on the jelly roll blanket, just as and when I feel like it, but haven't made a whole ton of progress. That's just kind of fun to pick up when your fingers need to scratch the knitting itch and you don't really need to think too much about what you're doing. So that's it for the knitting content.
Jim, do you want to go zoomy? Do you want to go zoomy? Come on! Hey! Come on! Come on, buddy. Good boy. Good boy. Was that a fun zoom? Was that a fun zoom?
Today we're going to make a small batch focaccia bread. It's a recipe from King Arthur Flour website, and I will link that down below. It's nice to have a recipe that's designed for just 2 people living in a household. So we'll have this a little bit later today for dinner with a salad. I have the pecorino and Parmigiano cheeses ready for the end part of baking the focaccia. I like to weigh my ingredients because I think it's more accurate that way. You know, measuring with a cup is, you know, depends how firmly you pack your flour in as to how much of a cup you actually get in a cup. So measuring just means that you're staying as true to the recipe as written as possible. All right, I have my flour. I'll need some yeast. 1/4 teaspoon plus 1/8, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And whisk those dry ingredients together. And then add warm water. Mix that together. And then add some olive oil, 1.5 teaspoons of olive oil. And mix that all together. Now is the part where it's better to just use your hands. It's kind of clumpy and lumpy. All right, everything is together. It's kind of fun. It feels like Play-Doh. That's why I love baking, just because it's fun to feel the different textures when you're baking bread especially. So now this has to sit in a warm place for 15 minutes before I do a bowl fold. And I have over there a proving mat because my kitchen is pretty cold, so that really helps things along. So I'm going to go ahead and put that over there for now. All right, the dough has rested for 15 minutes. It's time to go collect it and do a bowl fold. Every time I'm cooking, baking, I'm always thinking about my cookery teacher back in grammar school, Miss Shipman. And she taught us how to make all kinds of delicious things, very traditional English things. And we would have to bring our ingredients to school in a little basket, kind of like a Little Red Riding Hood, with little cloths that we had sewn for presenting our work on at the end of baking time. And our sewing teacher's name was Mrs. Best. And one of the first classes we had with her was to make a placemat. And then that would come along in our little basket on cookery lesson day. But I was thinking about Mrs. Best because my very first year at grammar school, one of the big projects that we had to make towards the end of the year was our summer school uniform. Can you imagine the horror? We had to go buy the fabric and then make the summer uniform. So in my case, I made a dress. And the most horrifying thing of all was after you made it, you had to wear it. So, you know, here's me, 11 years old, maybe I was 12 at that time, wearing this homemade summer uniform. That was the only time you had to do that. After that, you could buy your summer uniform from the uniform shop. I've completed the first bowl fold, so I'm going to put that back on the proving mat.
Now it's time to take the dough and press it into this loaf pan that's been generously oiled with olive oil. So let's see how the dough looks. So you turn the dough so it's now coated in oil. Now I have to press it into the pan with my fingertips. It has a mind of its own. It wants to just keep springing back. I think we're almost there. There we go. And now it has to rest for another 1.5 to 2 hours. The focaccia dough has had a chance to rise in the pan, and before I put it in the oven for the first 10 minutes, I'm going to put some halved manzanilla olives in. They have the pimento in the middle. Press those into the top of the dough. And now I'm going to put that in the oven for 8 to 10 minutes. So the focaccia's been in for almost 10 minutes. I'm about to take it out, and then I have to put the cheese that I grated earlier around the edges of the pan and then some in the middle. And then that cheese that you put around the edge creates something called a frico, which is a crispy, kind of crunchy, cheesy crust. So let's hope that works the way it's intended to. So it's time to get the focaccia out of the oven. Hopefully I don't burn myself. It smells amazing. All right, the oven is calling me. Time to take the focaccia out of the oven. The cheese is browned. Can you hear it sizzling?
One of the viewers from my first episode had noticed my circular needle storage and had asked how I made it. So I thought I would share that with you just very briefly. So this is it. It is a long piece of maple with vintage cotton reels attached to macrame decorative piece at the top, and then each cotton reel is tied to the next all the way down, and then glued onto the piece of maple. So I had a wooden knitting needle that had lost its partner that I decided to use for holding the whole thing together. And I'd never done macrame before, so I followed a YouTube tutorial, which I will link below. So it's not perfect, but it's enough to add, you know, a decorative element at the top and to hold the wooden knitting needle, which is acting as my hanger. The vintage cotton reels I got from an Etsy shop, and I'll link her down below. I think she still has some. These are from the 1940s and 50s, and I just chose colors out of the bag that I received that I just thought would be fun to glue to the wood. And then the circular needles just fit through the holes in the cotton reels. And even my biggest needle, which I think is a 6, will still fit through the hole, even though there's string in it. And I didn't want to write on the front of the holder what size needle is in each cotton reel. So I just made myself a cheat sheet on the back. That way, if I wanted to change anything up, I'm not committed on the front side. So this just hangs in my craft room on 2 hooks like this and keeps all my needles together. So it's pretty easy to make. You just have to be patient when tying these cotton reels together with square knots, you know, just to try and make the spacing as even as possible. I mean, it's not completely necessary to be that precise, but you know, you do want it to look somewhat nice. So that's how I made this holder. Pretty straightforward. So let me know if you make one for yourself. One of the other projects that I've been working on recently is a drop spindle project. I have been working on this for quite a while because when I work on a drop spindle, I tend to spin very thin thread. Not intentionally, it's just the way that it seems to work for me. So I'm kind of going with it. What I'm spinning is 80% merino and 20% bamboo in this colorway, which is called Ducky Darling. It's incredibly soft. And so far, I have 2 spindles worth. And I am working on a 3rd with one of the newest spindles I got within the last year. This is a Snyder spindle, and it's absolutely lovely to work with. And as you can see, I am spinning it quite finely. And my plan with these is to wind them up, sorry, and then ply them all together. So I'll have a 3-ply, which will be probably like a heavy fingering weight, maybe. We'll see. Right now it's too thin to knit with, unless I want to just spend an eternity making a lace shawl, which I don't. But it's been a really fun meditative project, and I did learn to spin on a drop spindle by taking a class, which I highly recommend. It's good to have someone in person to show you the ropes initially, but not totally necessary, because after I'd taken that lesson and then had a little break, I couldn't quite remember what I was doing. So I followed a YouTube tutorial which taught you how to spin, initially using the park and draft method, where you spin, draft a little bit, and park the spindle between your knees. That way you don't feel like you're going to drop it all the time. So I will link that below. And in the meantime, I will include a little clip of me spinning on this spindle.
Just the thought of spring has me wanting to bring a little bit of springtime into the house. So I'm going to look for some spring blooming shrubs and trees and bring those bare stems into the house to force them to bloom. This old crabapple is on the property. I thought I would take some cuttings and see if I can force some blooms. It's a beautiful day. Saw my first robin today and a flock of goldfinches. And then right here is my fenced-in vegetable garden. As you can see, it's not ready for planting yet because it's still under the snow. But it's a gorgeous day.
big lilac bush that is outside the front of the house, and it has buds, more buds than the crabapple. So I'm going to try and take some of these too. Just a week and a half later, and the lilac is bursting forth, and there's a tiny little green bud appearing on the crabapple. We've reached the end of another episode. Thank you so much for joining me. If there's anything you'd like to see next time or have me talk about, let me know in the comments section below. And please consider hitting like and subscribe so that we can grow this community. And until the next time, happy crafting. Bye-bye.